I'm not gonna participate in your delusion. You'll never meet a Republican that uses pronouns. It's just a fact. It's only
Everybody
the left.
uses pronouns. Just
Everyone
some people choose to
Okay, well,
announce
my
their
pronouns now for the rest of the time are pretty princess.
That's
And
not
if
a
you
pronoun.
What do you mean?
Those are not even pronouns.
Okay, so what are your
That's
zizay,
grammatic.
zen, zer, ishi?
We are approaching the 150th episode of Middle Ground, and we need your help to continue making more episodes.
Join our Middle Ground Patreon community and make Middle Ground with us.
My former political views were cult-like. Can the agreeers please step forward?
I was gonna say, I think both are just two separate cults, because which is so funny. And I think also sides have ironically kind of switched, because as a Republican now, I'm so anti-war. I'm anti-sending money to all these different countries that are not ours while people are sick from the water and children are starving. Anti-pharmaceutical, anti-big government, anti all these things. And I'm like, that is original liberalism. So I'm I think I'm more independent, but I register and I vote as far right as I possibly can and always will.
I think both sides are very tribal.
Yeah.
But in terms of cult, at this moment in time, I think the left is more cult-like. I was in it for 20 years, what's known today as the woke left, but we used to call it social justice left, progressive left.
Known by conservatives as woke.
Right, but here are some of the characteristics that I think make it more cult-like than perhaps the conservative side. One is that if you had questions, you had to check your privilege, or there was always some line that they would use to get you to stop asking questions, which is sort of cult-like. And then the other thing was there was this encouragement to separate from people who didn't agree with you. And so I slowly over time whittled my world down to just people who were in the social justice left. And there was really, for people who left, which I did eventually, which was a long process, it's a bit like you become an apostate. You don't just leave or have different opinions. It's like once you leave, you can't come back.
That is a cult. It's like Scientology.
Well, I have perspective because I came from a really religious background, and there's a lot of shame around believing something other than what you're taught. Because of that, it makes you feel like you can't express any questions without being told that you're going to hell, you're going to be exiled from your family. And so when I started thinking a little bit outside of the lines of what I was always told, family members literally to this day will not speak to me, will not look at me in family gatherings where you're just supposed to be like, you're my family, aren't you supposed to love me endlessly? And in turn, they've exiled me because I don't believe the things that they believe.
And I think that's horrible.
Yeah.
Yeah, agreed.
By the way,
Agreed,
I
yeah.
am ironically pretty far known as far right in my community, and then ironically very leftist at times, because you can't please everyone. But I have never cut off a person because of their political beliefs in my life, but everyone on the left did it to me.
I will say from my own experience, but coming from the opposite. So especially when the George Floyd incidents were happening, it was kind of, a consensus that you should be BLM, rah, 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 all cops are bad. And just me questioning that within my own circles, it's like there's a lot of pushback and it feels a little awkward because I'm just, it's literally just asking questions. If I did have to, point a finger, I would point it at the left or the liberals for feeling attacked by words that are said on the other side. Because there's not a lot of, conservatives that are like, oh, you said there's more genders, I'm offended. I'm personally attacked by that.
That's literally only one side.
Yeah, it is.
Can the disagreeers please step forward?
I honestly think that both sides have very tribalistic tendencies at a time. As far as the question, were my beliefs personally cult-like? I don't think that I was in a cult. And I think you mentioned that conservatives don't get offended by speech as much, but conservatives get offended by pronouns. They got offended by Mr. Potato Head. They get offended by all kinds.
Really stupid things.
Yeah, they get very triggered also. And for me, when I left the right, that was something I noticed, because I started off as anti-SJW, triggered feminist stuff. And I'm like, the right is kind of becoming this way too a little bit with some things, very offended and triggered.
I would like to push back a little bit about conservatives being offended by pronouns. I think it's more so that they are being forced and to acquiesce to the pronouns of other people, which is, you know, a form of, you know, controlling speech.
Well, don't conservatives get really mad like when the whole pronouns in bio thing?
No,
They're
like,
oh, look, you have pronouns.
I get what both of you are saying, because my thing is like, why would I ever care if you have pronouns in bio, but I will never call you by
I think
them.
it's more that people just view it as a tribal signifier. So
Yeah.
in the same way that someone might view, oh, that person has a cross in their profile.
Yeah, I mean,
faith.
like, I've definitely, like, if I see pronouns in someone's bio, I'll roll my eyes. It doesn't mean that I, like, hate the person or not, but it is going to signify to me, in 95% of cases, I'm gonna know exactly what
I know exactly who you are almost, so
are.
I'm just gonna stay away
Or
from
you're
you.
gonna assume that you know a bunch
yeah.
because someone
But
has
why,
pronouns
though?
in their bio.
Because I'm not going to participate in your delusion. And my thing
Because
is like,
it's-
you'll never meet a Republican that uses pronouns. It's just a fact. It's only
Everybody
the left.
uses pronouns. Just some
Everyone
people choose to
uses-
Okay, well,
announce
my
their
pronouns now for the rest of the time are pretty princess.
That's
And if
not
you
a
didn't-
pronoun.
What do you mean?
Those are not even pronouns.
Okay, so what are your
That's
ze,
grammatic.
them, zer, he, she?
Yeah, I think
Great,
that pronouns.
pause, sorry. I want to pull it back to cult.
Yes.
Okay?
Circling back to the cult idea, we kind of straight in went to pronouns, which I think is, again, it's like a kind of a hot topic. The media really makes you believe that one side is more of a cult than the other. That's all subjective. Some of the people that are on my side, it's cultish, but it doesn't mean everyone is.
Well, let me give you an example, like, because I agree with you that the media is fomenting these, like, right side, left side cults. 100% I agree with you.
Yeah.
So, like, when I, quote unquote, like, left the left,
Yeah.
it was because I had begun to question the policies that were surrounding the whole COVID situation. And I experienced cultishness on the left and the right, for sure. But what I found was, if there were people who were willing to listen to me, they were like 95% of the time they were on the right. About, like, I think the government is trying to control us. I think that they're trying to force us to do X, Y, Z things. I only found ears on the right, except in maybe one or two cases. So, like, for me, I was like when the prompt is like, oh, the left is, or your former side is a cult. That was very visceral to me. There was a section of the right that I could talk to, and they didn't feel like there was a section of the left.
Well, you can always talk to me about it sometime if you want.
I was gonna say,
I'd be
me
more
too.
than happy to talk
I'm
to you
more
about the
than happy
COVID
to
stuff.
have
Thank you, my friend.
I think Trump will win the next election.
Hey.
Love Trump. I think he's the greatest president we've ever had, and I love him. I've loved him for a long time. Personality, everything. I will say, the more they do this witch hunt after him, he just keeps getting more and more popular. And now that we have free speech on Twitter, you cannot deny that people love him. Like, the black community's coming forward, and it's just funny because I love watching them go after him, because I think elections at this point are 100% fake and rigged. I just watch
Are you
him
gonna
rise
think
in
that if he
popularity.
wins?
Huh?
Are you gonna think that if
I
he
think
wins?
I mean, with the entire world against you, I'd be shocked. But I just think now it's harder for them to hide it.
Yeah, I mean, I had major TDS for his Trump derangement syndrome.
Yeah. A lot of people on the right have it. They were like obsessed with him and crazy.
The cult thing.
Yeah, it's a cult thing.
I had major Trump derangement syndrome through pretty much his entire first presidency, except I was a little softer towards the middle of 2020. But even so, I didn't really come around to liking Trump until after he was president. I went totally like Republican in my viewpoints, but I think that, like, I came around to liking him, unfortunately, after his presidency, because I saw what we got next. And so now at this point, I'm voting for Trump in the primary, in the general. God willing.
And my life was way better then.
My life was
and
way
I could
better.
afford things.
I'm concerned that he's going to win as well, and I don't think it's because he's the greatest president we've ever had. I think it's because the Democrats have a branding problem. And I think Trump is a brilliant marketer, and I think he's a brilliant con man, and I think he's done a fabulous job making the case to the people who love him that he's going to do what they want him to do, even though he doesn't. So I think he definitely can win. I think they're both wildly unpopular, both him and Biden.
Totally.
I think that there's not a lot of great options. I think the vast majority of people voting want another option, and I do think that his base has more enthusiasm than the Democratic base does.
I think it's funny you say that, because I think that about the right. I think we have the worst branding issue in the world. I think the right is so tacky.
The Republican Party does. Trump does.
Yeah, I think the
Trump's a
Republican
great
Party
marketer.
is just so tacky, 20 years behind. But it's funny because I'm watching far left people come onto like my side now, and I'm like, it's starting to shake things up. But it was funny because I think if there was another option between him and the current vegetable we have, and also Kamal is so unpopular, like you just have double trouble with
Yeah,
them.
the Democrats aren't. They're not putting up a viable option. I think
RFK I thought was
I think the
amazing.
worst thing that the Democrats did for themselves was like push RFK out of that primary
Who I
process.
love, by the way.
I like him too. And now he's running as an independent.
I'd like to start off. I really do hope Trump wins. I think it's for the best interest of America that he does. Unfortunately, I do fully believe that the Democratic Party is a bunch of political terrorists, and I do believe that they will do whatever they can to steal the election. You know, it's a hot take, but from the last election with the ballots, I really don't think they're gonna make it
Trump
easy.
like called and said to find fake ballots.
I mean, there's a longer call that you could listen to that debunks everything. I mean, he's not gonna end up in jail. All of that is just, a hit job, but I do think the Democratic Party would rather die than have him in power, and I think they could do that because people aren't aware about the ballot fraud that's going on.
Just quick on that, on the voter fraud comments that you made. Like, what about yesterday? Sidney Powell just pled guilty to 6 counts of the conspiracy in Georgia against the election there. So that's actual fraud that was committed on the right side for Trump.
There's probably on both sides then, but I would say it's much more in the favor of seeing that, during the election count, they pause it and they, mail in ballots for Joe Biden.
I also think we shouldn't take guilty pleas at face value because the justice system really, really
that would be believing the rest of the system, which I don't believe any of it. So I guarantee there's fraud on both sides, and it's all
for sure.
and I think it's all corrupt. So
I agree.
I don't think he's going to win. I agree with you. I don't trust the last election results, but I actually don't trust any presidential election results since Kennedy. So I don't. I just think. I think. I am going to vote because screw them. I'm not gonna. I'm not gonna allow them to instill apathy in me. But I don't really put a lot of stock in national elections anymore, and I think local is more important. So I think that they probably are gonna not give it to a Republican this time around.
Religion played a part in changing my beliefs.
Join our Middle Ground Patreon to watch this exclusive prompt.
Democrats are more compassionate than Republicans.
I agree.
Fancy meeting you here.
I was waiting for someone to say something, and I hate it. You know I don't want to be sitting here. I will say, I do think the left tends to be more emotional. I would assume that would come with feelings of empathy. And I will say, people on the right, I am not actually very popular on the right. As soon as you disagree on certain things, I mean, the death threats, the hate. Yeah, so you're liberal now. And I'm like, and there are certain things like abortion's a hot topic. I think it's a little crazy and it's a little too far. I would hope that in the future I become a more middle voice in the Republican Party. But I do find in general, like people on the left, I think because you're more emotional, inherently you're gonna care more about people's feelings. I'm not really one to care that much. That's why I'm on the other side, you know what I mean? But I'll give you guys that credit.
I actually agree with what you're saying a lot because they've even done like literal brain scans and they can actually predict people's political beliefs based on their brains up to like 80 to 90% accuracy. Like it's insane. And so I think, well, you're right, that people on the left do tend to think more so, I think it's with their left side of the brain, that has more emotion involvement, which can be both a blessing and a curse, I think, at times, because politics are also about factual information. And so feelings are obviously not all that matter. But yeah, Democrats do tend to be more compassionate at the end of the day.
Yeah, and when I was on the left my whole life, and like I was literally an emo kid. So it's like funny being on this side now. Now I kind of like, I'm a lot more analytical about things. I try to cut the emotion as honestly a survival tactic at this point.
I agree with that too, because for me in my personal journey, it was very close to that. Like my mom used to tell me that. She's like, you have like zero empathy. But I feel like as I went through my journey, not just like transitioning in politics, but just like I went through my own kind of self-discovery journey. And I feel like empathy really came into play there. And as I started to listen to stories from people that had lived experiences, I was like, wow, I really do feel for them and I can put myself in their shoes. And I feel like now I'm even maybe an empath. Like I'm very much.
You can totally gain it and you can totally lose it.
Yeah.
Totally. It's up to you.
Yeah. But I do feel like since that, I feel like, I am so much more compassionate now towards, humanity in general and people. And as I gained empathy, I became more liberal.
I think Democrats are much more concerned with like social programs that help people who aren't themselves. And I think that they often are the leaders of the civil rights movements of our time. And I think those things and leading policy with people first, I think, is a bigger priority for them. And it's not to say that Republicans don't have empathy or compassion. I just don't think it necessarily leads their politics.
So Jonathan Haidt has a great book called The Righteous Mind, which I think everyone on this panel would love it probably. But in that book, he's trying to figure out, I think the subtitle is Why Good People Are Divided by Politics and Religion. And he divides morality up into different types of morality. One of those types, the one that liberals and conservatives have in common, is the care-harm principle. They both care about people. They both don't want people to be harmed. But the difference is that they have different definitions of what's going to harm people and what's caring for people. And I thought that was really interesting. When I started leaving the left, I thought, oh, Republicans don't care about people, that's why they oppose raising the minimum wage. And it wasn't until I started listening to other points of view that I realized, oh, they oppose raising the minimum wage because they think it's going to harm people, because you're going to get fewer hours, fewer workers, people are going to get fired. And so it's not that we disagree, liberals and conservatives, on the why. Like, we agree on that, why we should care for people. We disagree on the how.
I agree with that 100%. But adding more to that is my way of showing compassion would be to tell someone that pick yourself up by your bootstraps. Like, you have more potential, you can do this, as opposed to someone else saying that, okay, the government should step in and support you and do X, Y, Z for you, which in the grand scheme of things isn't going to benefit that person. It's going to teach them that they can rely on a bigger being to be, their support system. But if you learn how to pull yourself up, I think you can be more equipped to go throughout this world in a successful way.
Can't both things be true? I don't feel like liberals are telling people that they need someone to pick them up and that they can't do it for themselves. I think they're saying that there's inequalities in the world and that there's structures in place that put people in a position to where they can't get the life or the things that they want, the things that they deserve, and they can do both at the same time. You can pick yourself up and you can accept welfare. And I think that there's a lot of programs that people have benefited from, even just the ability to feed their kids. It doesn't mean that this mom is all of a sudden going to not work because she's getting welfare. She's probably already has 2 or 3 jobs.
Talking from my own experience, I think if I'm being told, as I was, that I am oppressed and that there are systems against me, I am not going to have the same capabilities of lifting myself up from that if I'm maintaining the mindset that I am oppressed and that I can't do something. Instead of saying that I could have done better, I'll be like, oh, the system's against me. I
feel like black people are told not that. They're told they have to work twice as hard, so they do. I don't think that black people don't try because they're told that they're oppressed. I think that they are told that you're going to have to do more because of discrimination.
Yeah, I think in terms of compassion, I think that on the right there's more like a tough love kind of thing where it's like, you have to do this for yourself. We can't do this for you, but we want to encourage you to take initiative, and you can be whatever you want to be. And I think, on the left, it's like, well, we need to help everybody to, realize their full potential. I think both of those things can be compassionate in different ways. And I think to a certain degree you need both mentalities.
Exactly.
I think we need to find middle ground and say that on both sides are finding compassion, I guess, in their. That's why I didn't step forward. Yeah.
Yeah.
Changing sides was traumatic.
was very, very, very traumatic. I've grown on the belief, that, Black people are systematically oppressed, and that does a lot for a young person's perspective. And when I started, listening to the other side, and I started to dismantle that within myself, I felt like my whole life was really a lie. Not only that, but I was also a pretty big ally of the LGBTQ community. And then seeing transgenderism dismantled in front of me was also very discomforting, because I have transgender family members, and I was very pro LGBTQ, and it's just feeling that like everything's just crumbling down. It took me a lot of time to cover through it, so it was, I remember the feelings very vividly.
I mean, I have a different perspective because, again, we kind of are on different sides of that spectrum. I was raised militantly in religious and political ideologies my entire life. And when I was 20, my sister was killed in a car accident. And because of that, and that extreme trauma that happened that had nothing to do with my ideologies, it allowed me to open up my eyes to the struggles that other people were going through, because I had never experienced something of that devastation before. So I opened my eyes to like, what else is going on that I'm not aware of, that I've been in this bubble being told that, no one else is oppressed. I was just told that they weren't real, and that I had to be steadfast with my beliefs, and if I questioned them, then, there was this fear and guilt associated with it, and it caused an immense amount of trauma that I'm still desperately working through to this day.
I'm sorry for your loss, that's horrible.
Yeah.
It's funny because we're on different sides, supposedly, but we have a lot of similar experiences, because the social justice or woke world, I was in it for about 2 decades. I worked with comedians who also were woke and pushed woke beliefs in their comedy, and I really was a true believer in it. I thought it was about ending racism and sexism, and when I started to question it, it was like your whole world crumbling. I lost a lot of friends. They weren't friends, they were allies. That's the way I think of it now. I ended my career and changed my whole perspective. And I think the reason it's so traumatizing, to use that word, is because it's not just like you're changing one opinion on one issue. If you think of your belief system as like a house, you are literally bulldozing your whole house to the ground and starting over with brick by brick. What do I believe about this thing? I don't have an opinion yet on that because I'm trying to read about, I had limited myself in so many ways of what I was allowed to listen to or allowed to read, or, within that cult, there are people that you just don't listen to. I had never listened to a lot of conservatives. So.
And that's a problem in and of itself too, is I think to have a good understanding of just society, of people of both sides, you have to be able to listen. I think not being able to inquire about why someone believes something that they say and then have a confrontation about it is why there's so much division.
I think something I've learned through this whole ordeal is that anyone, anywhere, on any side that tells me not to ask questions, I'm going to immediately ask questions.
Of course.
You know what I mean? And
you should be able to.
Yeah.
You should be able to ask questions on either side and just not feel like there's going to be daggers thrown at you for it. I might not necessarily agree, but I'm allowed to hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
I don't want to shut anyone down. Like freedom of speech, you're allowed to speak. I'm allowed to disagree.
I was on the fence with this one because my experience wasn't necessarily traumatizing, but it was definitely really uncomfortable. My entire family are all like staunch Republicans, Trump supporters, and I'm one of the only ones that have actually branched off of that and away from that. And so I was silenced pretty much because I was getting a lot of pushback and I was getting a lot of hate and kind of being bullied for my views and for speaking out against them and what they believe.
I feel like that's the one thing we have in common. I don't think all of us had a beautiful transitioning. Like I would like to put it in a positive way, it was the worst time of my life. I lost literally everything, which is weird because I always feel like I've been the same Emily. And as soon as you put politics in it, you're like this different person. I'm like, you guys, it's me. I've always been this person. But I will say, like on a positive note, like I lost everything. And I'm so happy I I did. I would not have my boyfriend, my friends, my career, my spirituality. I mean, it was the hardest and best thing that's ever happened to me. And if people go through that, I think you can either be a victim or it could be the most hardest, most beautiful thing you ever go through. And I could not be more thankful. I feel very, very lucky.
I think for me, it was less traumatizing and more empowering. I think knowledge is power. And I think when I started, I grew up, same as you guys, very, very religious and conservative, tightly knit family and community. And there was just a very limited allowance of what you could believe. And there was a very limited view of what America was, what America represented internationally. And as a queer person, it was also, conservatives were not super welcoming. And so for me, leaving that space and realizing, oh, the United States is not the beacon of hope that we wish it were internationally, and queer people are allowed to be happy and fulfilled. It just, to me, it felt like freedom, and it felt like, oh, I now see how America became the world's strongest superpower. And there's a lot of issues that come along with that power. And with the freedom we have, it comes at the cost for a lot of other people around the world. And I think getting that information and knowledge, it made me feel like my eyes were opening to the real world and not just what was happening in my community and in this country.
The dual party system hurts America.
Yeah. 1,000%.
Hey, everybody.
There's 350 million people in this country. There's no way we all have two opinions.
Exactly.
No.
And it's crazy too, because we were just talking at the beginning about cults, and it's like, how do we expect people to not become inevitably really divided and polarized if it's like, are you on the right side or the wrong side? And that's it, you know what I mean? So like, depending on who you ask, they're gonna tell you what they think is the right or the wrong side. But
when you were saying Robert Kennedy, you were saying, oh yeah, he would be a great candidate, and I think he would be able to maybe see both sides. Now he's running for an independent. How often does an independent or a non-Republican or Democrat win an election?
Yeah.
Maybe local,
Yang.
but not presidential election. So now we've maybe potentially lost a candidate that could see both sides and could actually make change. But when there's so much division on two sides, there's no way that the majority of people in the United States are actually going to get a change in the ways that they need it.
I think most people are more in the middle and like have a lot more that they agree on than they realize, but this two-party system, and especially the media, they keep us divided, they pit us against each other.
It's funny because I'm like, I actually should be there because I actually don't agree. I think the two-party system is working perfectly because we're all at each other's throats.
Yeah.
And I think that's what they want.
It's working for what they want.
It's working for what they want and not for what we want.
Right.
So it's actually perfect.
who's they?
The
That's what I
establishment.
was gonna say.
The political leaders.
Yeah,
it's like you have a
the
50%
entrenched
chance of winning every election because the country's split right in half.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And everyone has to be tribal, and we have to argue about things like whether or not trans people are trans or real people. And then it stops us from moving any sort of other conversation forward.
Stops moving forward.
We
Right,
get
like the
caught in these
RNC
culture
and the
wars.
DNC have no incentive to have like more parties.
Which is
right?
why
Like,
Congress puts forth any bills to change the way that elections are
Yeah.
done, or that even getting people on the ballot from other parties
Yeah.
is
Well, we're like
impossible.
distracted fighting, so we don't know they're like poisoning our food and water, and we're all like literally dying.
And to Blake's point, like, I think a good illustration of this happened in the past couple years where the COVID policies first came down, the mandates and stuff. They completely exploited this right-left thing, and they said, oh, wait, no, all the right people are over here and all the left people are over here. And, you know, the 70-something% possibly of people who just kind of follow went with their tribe. They successfully got us at each other's throats about policy like mask and vax, and did you get it? Are you going to get it? Do you agree with the policy? And you know what happened? We forgot about, like, where did this virus come from? And now they've all come around, now that we've all been successfully fighting for years. Now they're all quietly in the mainstream media going like, it probably came from the lab that was studying viruses like this, like somehow it got out. Well, sorry, we didn't let you talk about that back then, because we would have come together.
Yeah, but if we came together, we'd all go after them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why they don't
That's
want
why
us
they
to
don't
come
want that.
together.
That's why they don't want that. Yeah.
They don't want us to see this middle ground.
I think my disagreement is pretty simple. The two-party system seems to be an inherent flaw within democracy, because if the answer is to have more political parties, I think that loses its efficiency. And if it's to become one, you know, it stops being a democracy. And where the two-party system fails, we should, you know, make some improvements. Whether the two-party systems are actually causing America harm, I think it's just the way, you know, America was designed.
Yeah. Why can't we change it?
They don't want it to be changed.
Because they're making billions.
But what would you change it to?
Well, that's, do you have,
Well,
you have
because
10
I
hours?
would say,
Do you have like 85 days? I don't know.
what I would say is that, getting down to one political party would, it would seem, totalitarian in
yeah.
essence.
I don't
But,
agree with that,
I think, a lot of totalitarian societies, if there is a good moral head of that government, it could do a lot of good.
Yeah.
I would say Singapore, it's illegal to spit gum on the floor, and that's because of their totalitarian government, I'm pretty sure. And, but it also promotes, decency.
Like Dubai, it's like you can't go over there and yell and like shake your butt in a thong, and like I think that is not okay to do either, and that's kind of totalitarian over there as well.
But those are like very little things that you're giving up to have no control over your own life.
Like
Saudi Arabia also is another example. Is like you will chop your hand off literally if you steal, and as a result there is no crime. Imagine living somewhere where zero crime.
But there's no freedom.
There is zero crime.
You
will
will
literally
freedom either. And again,
freedom.
if we want to talk about
no
biased
freedom.
statistics, totalitarian government is not going to be delivering accurate statistics from within when they're saying, hey, look, we chop everybody's hands off when they steal, and now crime is at 0%.
Well, and people feel like if they vote for a third party that you're giving it to the other side.
Yes, that's what I did in the Hillary versus Trump election. I voted for Jill Stein, and when I was doing it, I was like, oh, I'm so passionate about it. I'm so passionate about it because renewable energy, green energy, whatever. And then I left the ballot, and I was like, oh no, wait, hold on, is that just going to be kind of like thrown to the side? And
It's not. It's just a process. It takes time to change, and I think instead of like trying to go to like a more restricted society, it's like, how can we fix democracy? And so it's like, how can we actually put power back into the hands of the people? And voting third party, it may not be this generation even that sees the benefit, but it's gonna take one person. I think if Bernie Sanders or Trump had run third party, it would have been a much different scenario. But people are afraid to leave the system, and RFK is trying it now, so we'll see what happens, but it's even hard to get on the ballot as a third party right now.
I am still aligned with certain policies from my former political beliefs.
I know the prompt said policies, but I'm definitely still okay with certain things that are generally seen more as like the conservative thing. I sometimes do agree with conservatives about like people being too sensitive, for example. Like I think that's definitely a problem, or the cancel culture thing, I think is a totally like a fair issue that is like a very real problem that can be talked about, so, yeah.
I think when I thought of policies, I was thinking of I immediately went to the economy because, why are we going so far overseas and billions, trillions of dollars go overseas, but there are people that are literally outside a Starbucks starving. And I'm like, what's going on? Why can't we help this person? And that's where the conflict comes, because I'm like, hold on, wait, this is a more conservative idea. However, it's also humanitarian, which I believe is the root of it, is we just need to get to a common ground with that.
Yeah, that's literally me.
how
I'm
I
America
feel.
first.
Yeah, I was gonna say make America great again. That's not old school Bush conservatism. You know what I mean?
It's funny 'cause I'm like, why are we worrying about them when there is people literally starving in front of me, and I'm still pro-choice. That's an extremely liberal thing in my community. And other than that, I care about the planet. I care about the animals.
Woke.
I care about I care about regenerative farming. I think that should be the biggest issue being discussed right now.
Yeah.
The soil is, we die without it, and that is something not many people on the right are touching, and those are huge issues for me.
Yeah, and getting back to indigenous cultures and letting the indigenous nations.
They know what they're doing.
They know,
and we destroyed it.
Well, exactly. We have a country, a territory, Puerto Rico, that's literally impoverished and in crumbles due to all the natural disasters, and yet we deny it.
And the better we help ourselves, the more we can help them. We got to get our shit straight.
I think that I came out here to say I still hold a lot of the positions I held on the left, and it's kind of funny because I think what's left and right has changed. We don't even know what's up and what's down anymore, because I always thought when I was in the left for 20 years, I marched against the Iraq War. I was anti-corporations, anti-big pharma, anti-war, and now I feel like things have switched to such a degree that it's more of the right who's voicing those concerns when it comes to questioning big pharma, questioning corporations. And so I don't even know if that's accurate to say I hold opinions that the left holds, because I don't know if they hold them anymore.
So I don't agree with any of the values that I previously had. I used to be a black supremacist. I used to be anti-American. I used to be a feminist. I used to be an ally. And as I've collected new information and evolved my understanding of the world, I am now pro-American. I see the alphabet community as an acronym for sexual perversions. I see feminism as inherently misogynistic and offensive, honestly. And I see my past black supremacist ways and a lot of pro-black things as very racist. And so it's a flip-flop, and I used to be pro-choice. I definitely not. It's obviously the murder of unborn humans, and I just think it's crazy that we don't see that, and there's no way I could ever go back to holding those beliefs because it just would be wrong.
Never say never, because you've already changed once.
Never.
I don't really hold any conservative values. I'm sure there's some you could find that I'd be like, oh, that's not terrible. I don't really hold a lot of democratic values. I consider myself more a progressive populist.
No, I'm just kidding.
So I think both sides have failed this country and the people in it massively, and I think everyone here actually kind of agrees with that. But we continue to bolster up the two political party system. I think, like I said, neither of them have worked. Our country is eroding and deteriorating. You can't blame just one party, because every 8 years the White House changes colors, and it's blue and now it's red, and it's blue and it's red. Congress flips back and forth, and neither party has been able to consistently stay in power because they both suck. So we get one, we hate it, we switch, we hate it, we switch. So I tend to think it all needs to be kind of wiped away, rebuilt, and rethought. I think the experiment has failed.
Yeah. That's fair. And both sides have their extreme, far left and far right. And like most people are generally in the middle, but like I feel like there's nuance in things, and people forget that there's like, it doesn't have to be so black and white. It doesn't have to be one extreme or the other. And say, with different policies like abortion, for example, like, we can be, pro-choice, but like agree that there should be like a limit on when you should be able to abort the baby. Like there's things that people should be able to debate and discuss and like come to a compromise on, whatever it is. There's layers to things, and I just think that we're just such a black and white society right now. I feel like we just are so like extreme one side or the other, and that's why it's good when we can have we can come in and say, yeah, like I agree with this policy on this side, but this policy on this side, And
like, instead of just being like, we're banning abortion, like, can we just find a middle ground?
Right.
Because we just keep losing on this subject, and I'm tired of losing.
Yeah.
It's exhausting.
People are dying.
But whether you agree with them or not, you just said people are dying. Someone with that viewpoint, they would say, yes, millions of unborn babies.
Yeah,
like they view it as, even if you don't agree, it's the loss of a human life is more important to them than allowing the government to have the say over what a woman does with her body. They prioritize it here. I'm still pro-choice, which I know also, my opinions on abortion have been in flux for a few years. We should become more accustomed to saying, I'm thinking about this thing for a long time.
Yeah, and like that's why I don't hate on them, because I think it's beautiful, and I'm also like a weird Republican. I'm literally pro-choice, but I go, no, you're literally murdering a baby, and I believe it's spiritually demonic. I still want someone to have that right, which is a weird thing, because I'm saying multiple horrible
rational.
things.
Well, I mean, you know what's interesting is who I think you were saying like the experiment has failed, and it's like I think we've strayed so far away from the experiment. I actually think we have to go back to the Constitution, which people have been abandoning on both sides. I'm not going to say one side more than the other. People have been abandoning the Constitution on both sides. Right. So and so I don't even disagree with you. I don't think the experiment has failed. I think that we've gone away from what the experiment was supposed to be. I think we have to take a good hard look at the Constitution and say, what does this say? This is the supreme law of the United States. And there's a lot of people who that's inconvenient for. And good, it should be inconvenient for the government. It should be absolutely inconvenient for the government. Yeah. But anyway, that's what I think.
I love that.
All right. Thank you.
Hey,
Hands everywhere.
Nice to meet you.
You're on both sides, kind of, and that's how I am.
Far on both sides.
Yeah, but I'm.
See you.